Hi, I'm Charles White. The players call me the Space Pope.
So, Charles, what is the Space Pope for people who don't know?
Well, there's a long history to it. It wasn't just this single step that just occurred, and all of a sudden it was famous. It was just little things that kind of built up. But basically, my first, the two big steps. The first part was in 2015. I vowed to take down an NPC player, which that's impossible. You can't do that. Nobody can take down an NPC. So there was this Empress of the Amar Empire in EVE Online, and I kind of read all the lore, and I determined that she was illegal. So during a role-playing event in Reykjavik, Iceland, I said, I have an item of new business, and they were like, what's that? I said, the Empress is a criminal. And I was an Amar player, and everybody's like, you heretic! And so that kind of started a bunch of domino effects, and the company decided to play. And so it wasn't me that killed her, but turned out she ended up killed by an in-game entity, the Drifters, but that wasn't the long-range plan. So basically that got part of my fame for doing that.
But you were the domino effect. You were the domino that hit the chain, right?
Yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, and then the other part of that was in 2014 and 2015, I lost combined 7 friends to suicide, and so it was players, coworkers, just members of my friends and circles. So it hit me pretty hard, and then when I was on comms, I just decided, if I hear someone kind of struggling, I'm just going to try to talk them down, and try to help. Then I met a person here at EVE Vegas, also named Coffee Rocks and Mom Bellicose, and they launched a Broadcast for Reps initiative because Mom Bellicose lost her son to suicide, and so they decided to create something called Broadcast for Reps. So I already had my own organization called Sixth Empire, and I said, you have my sword. And so I started promoting the Broadcast for Reps. So between them and us, we do a lot to try to raise awareness about anti-suicide. And that's when the players, pretty much said, no, you're not an Amarian priest, you're the Pope. You're the Pope of EVE Online. And so there was a costume contest or a cosplay contest in Reykjavik, and I made the mistake of dressing up as the Pope, and now I can't undo this, nor do I want to. Yeah. But it wasn't an ego thing. I didn't do that on purpose. The players dubbed me that, and now I'm trying to live up to it, and now I'm trying not to screw that up.
Isn't it amazing how video games went from just basically time wasters for kids to helping spread awareness for suicide, or helping people cope with loss or dealing with personal issues? They can be a great comfort to people, especially MMOs where you're dealing with other players, a community.
Yeah, it's really counterintuitive. There's the stereotype of the, even the president of the United States, you use the stereotype of a 300-pound person sitting in mom's basement. And it's like, that's just wrong, because it's well, I guess I can put it this way. CCP honored me with this current, the core EVE core video, where it's my words at the beginning of the video and it's my words at the end of the video, where I talk about the community. It really is the community. A lot of people don't get that it's not just gameplay, it's not just what type of ships we have, it's these alliances, it's all this swag that comes out, and it's all this connection, people flying all over the world to be here. I mean, there's people who have taken buses here and they only have $20 in their pocket, just trying to be with us all, and hang out and do stuff. And so those emotional bonds, those connections, that's what ties us all together. I get all misty about this stuff. People know I get pretty misty-eyed when I talk about the community. Anything else? Wait. Starships. I can talk about explosions and I'm okay. I can talk about killing in game and I'm okay. But when I talk about the community, that's the part that's pretty deep for all of us, and including me.
We can talk about starships if you want. They're introducing a new dreadnought this spaceship. How do you think that's going to affect the in-game economy and player base?
Well, I have a saying, spread my love, and by love I mean lasers.
You will love me as you're riding in on the Dreadnought. Love me, shooting everybody.
Right. You know, the thing about Eve that new players don't get is we're immortal. So there's a song made by Permaban, which is called "Killing is a Means of Communication," and what it basically means is if I shoot you in the face and you're immortal, you're going to come back. So I'll shoot you in the face again, and you're going to come back. So killing is a means of communication. It's a kill mail is a way of saying I love you. Boom. It doesn't have the same effect. But new players come into Eve and they lose a ship and they rage quit, or they die and they rage quit. And it's like Eve is a different game. It's a game to keep you terrible as a player. You know, you have to learn how to deal with the harshness of the environment of it, and I totally understand the origins of it. It's Iceland. You know, the island Iceland made these Icelandic people very hardy and able to deal with these stresses. And so they made a game that is also hardcore and stressful. And so, yeah.
And it is an MMORPG, so just like in real life, they're going to be somebody who has a better car than you, a bigger house, a bigger bat, a stronger weapon. Just like in real life, you just have to learn to deal with that in the world and handle it accordingly. And like you said, it's not as bad as Ultima Online, where if you were killed, you lost everything. Like, you get penalized for death, but it's not the end of your gameplay session. You know, you're not just done, have to start over from scratch.
Yeah, you know, I like to equate it, new players too, is like, what if you were Han Solo? You know, the Empire is out to get you. So not everybody could be a smuggler. Only a good smuggler can smuggle, like Han Solo made his reputation. So Eve gives you that opportunity. It puts up really, really hard challenges. And if you can't meet those challenges, well, then you're not as good as Han Solo, are you? You know, they're not going to make a movie about some boring pilot that gets caught by the Empire. You know, they're going to make a movie about the exceptional, the people that do it. And you get to write your own story in Eve and out of Eve. You know, so like my own story with Max Singularity, I fleshed out a whole lore backstory about him and how he is in charge of the House Singularity and how he's the co-founder of the Sixth Empire Alliance, and that's the in-game persona. But the out-of-game persona is different too. People say, how do we tell the difference between Max Singularity and Charles White? I said, well, me, I'm smiling all the time. I probably have a mental condition where I think just everything is awesome. So I'm always smiling. So the only way I can roleplay Max Singularity is to be permanently pissed off.
Convert or die, like the Tau Empire in 40K.
Yeah, pretty much. What do you want? That's how you know I'm role-playing Max Singularity. It's like, do we have time for this? Yeah.
What do you think it is about space operas in general? I mean, Star Trek, Star Wars, even the sci-fi serials in the 50s, you know, it's always been quite popular among gamers and people in general in entertainment.
I think it's that great unknown. It's the last frontier. It's in our DNA. You know, we once we got down out of the trees, we were like, you know, let's go look what's over the next hill. You know, what's over the next ridge. You know, what's across that lake, that river. You know, and it's exploring. And now that the Earth is smaller, what I mean by that is, in my day, when I was born, there were 3 billion of my fellow humans on this planet. Today's there's 7.7 billion on this planet. So it's more than double just in my lifetime. And I remember the very first time I was on the internet and I had a live chat with someone in Japan. And it was like, wow, you know, the Earth is smaller, you know, and I think we're going to go through some social changes where we have to deal with, you know, our remote nomadic exploration to trying to become one people. But then we look towards the stars and we go, ooh, what's across the next horizon? and so that's where I think the space genre is really appealing, and that was appealing for me.
Do you think we'll eventually colonize Mars in this lifetime?
So
Just get some realism talk in here, because the stars and stuff. Figured.
Right. So I'm speaking as a private citizen, not as a spokesperson for NASA, even though I worked for them for 32 years. So I'm a lunist, and I believe that we need to practice what we're doing. There's a lot of unknowns. I mean, people think we have really good technology. Well, some of it is not tested. And that's like, I'm going to train to go to Mount Everest, so I'm just going to put a backpack on and go to Mount Everest. Well, that would be dumb. I mean, isn't that rational? Isn't that just common sense? You put a backpack on, you go to Mount Everest, you're probably going to die. Most likely, I mean, there's bodies up there right now that haven't been brought down. You're going to be one of those bodies. And so I'm going to go to Mount Baldy near my house, which is only, 12,000 some feet. Then I'm going to go to Mount Whitney, and then I'm going to do Kilimanjaro, and then I'm going to do Everest, and maybe not in that order, but build up. So the moon is only 3 days away, and Mars is 9 months to a year away, and coming home, that's not the return trip. You get a flat tire out there. Yeah. It's a long way to wait for a tow truck to come get you, right? Yeah. So that's why I use the Everest analogy. Hillary died on Everest, so I don't think he was quite ready, but he was first.
I think there was a great stand-up comedian that said the first astronauts in space were like, you want to send me up there where there's no air, a vacuum where anything happens, I'm going to freeze to death and get my lungs sucked out of my mouth in a metal pod. Yeah. And you want to do this? What?
Yeah. People are always shocked. It's like, okay, I've worked for NASA for 32 years. I'm not going. I'm sending robots, and I've helped put Mars rovers on Mars. So I've done rovers, and I've helped send robotic probes all throughout the solar system. So I'm just fine looking at the reports coming back from the robotic. Maybe someday. I've been proposing this to my NASA people. I keep talking about it. I want to send a spacecraft that has a VR camera, and all of us can then just look VR around. But the reason we don't do that is a lot of people, again, think of the small Earth. Well, the solar system isn't that small yet. We still have data rate problems, and that's a lot of data that has to be moved, and people don't understand the speed of time, the speed of light. Because when a spacecraft sends its signal back to the Earth, you can't just point at the Earth and send a signal. You have to have all this smarts, all this rocket science. You have, if the Earth is 14 minutes light delay, you have to put where Earth is going to be in 14 minutes to broadcast that signal. Isn't that awesome?
I'm afraid we'll have to use math.
Yeah, right? And where's our education system today, because I just talk about these basic things. It's like, okay, Voyager's broadcasting, hours in advance. You can't just shoot it at the Earth, you got to know where it's at. You got to understand Doppler shifts. You got to understand all this science.
I think that's the misconception with entertainment and gaming and movies is they make it look so easy and straightforward. I think the one that made it seem most realistic was the Matt Damon one, The Martian, where they used a lot of math. Moving on, I would instantly die in 2 weeks because I would not be able to math that hard.
Yeah, I have to science the bleep out of this, right? So and again, that was what I call near fiction. So there's science fiction, which is like in the far future, like Star Trek. There's really in the future, like Star Wars. Dune is 12,000 years out in the future, and EVE Online is 24,000 years out. So that gives you an idea of how far future. But near future is like Matt Damon out there. But it was funny because people kept looking at me in the audience because I was the only one laughing and giggling through parts of the movie, and they're like, "What's he laughing at?" I was like, "You can't understand."
He's doing math, dude. He's doing it wrong. Or he's doing it as much as he can.
There were things I could see as a rocket scientist that I'm like, Well, that was creative license.
That doesn't work. That's not how that works.
That's not quite works. And I often get asked, name one thing. So in the very beginning of the movie, there's this giant windstorm that knocks down the camp, right? But at the end of the movie, he launches a rocket with a tarp nose cone. Which one is faster than the other? The atmosphere on Mars is 100 times less. You couldn't even fly a kite in a gale. A 30 mile an hour wind, the kite would be sitting on the ground because there's not enough. It's traveling fast, but there's not enough air to keep it up.
So would you say it's like I've met some friends who are doctors, and they're like, we can't watch any medical dramas because it drives us nuts. Are you the same way when you watch like semi-realistic science fiction movies?
Exactly. Well, I can watch it because I know it's a movie, so I know it's the exceptional case, and for entertainment value. But when people start taking it as science fiction, as science fact, then it's really tough because they're talking about EM drives, and that this EM drive will work, and it's like, no, this warp drive doesn't work that way. It's not a thing. Ion drives are better, at least that's a real thing. And even in EVE Online, they developed the game, but they didn't develop the reason why ships go as slow as they do, and They had an Abaddon, which is my favorite battleship from the Amar Empire. It only does 200 miles an hour in space. And you take a riding lawnmower and accelerate at 2 miles an hour, well, it'll keep accelerating at 4 miles, 6, 8, it'll keep accelerating. But in EVE, that's not the case. There's a top speed and 200 miles an hour. It would fall to the earth if that was the case. So they needed a whole new model, and for a long time it just kept bothering me. It ruined my immersion for a long time. So I helped CCP develop a physics model, and I talked to the developers about that, and they were like, well, that's new. And I said, yeah, no other science fiction has ever done that before. So I invented something called the Power Enhanced Generator, the PEG. And CCP incorporated into the game, and they incorporated into the book called Frigates of Eve. So I'm also a co-author of Eve Physics, with them. And all of a sudden everybody's going like, this works, and it was unlike any other science fiction model ever done before. It wasn't warp drives in the same way, and it used subspace in a whole different way. It used automatic power generation a whole new way. And now the Triglavian thing, they didn't have access to the PEG, so they have their own generator outside. So it was really cool. What other company pulls in the players this way? I killed an NPC, not directly.
Started a revolution.
Yeah, and then helped them write the lore. So for them to include me in the video and all that, it was an awesome tribute. I really felt honored.
And then the last question is, for people who play EVE Online or EVE or any of the CCP games and they're struggling mentally or emotionally, how can they reach out to your foundation to get help or talk to somebody?
Yeah, so Broadcast for Reps in game. Just type Broadcast for Reps in any Google browser with EVE on there, or use the hashtag B4R, and that'll get you to a group. My organization, the Sixth Empire, is also, if you're playing the game and you've already gone past that critical part and you just want to hang out with similar people who are having other issues and you want to play the game, then you can hang out with us for either temporary or permanent. We don't care. And you get, we can actually play the game, and we can go blow people up together.
Awesome. Thank you, Charles. Appreciate it.